My guest today is John St. Augustine. I met him in 2001 when my first book was released and I was a guest on his radio show. He's the reason I pursued my radio show because he told me I needed to be a host and not just a guest. He's probably the reason I have this television show too, because the radio led me here. I'm grateful to him. He's a mentor. We're great friends. And he's here to talk with me about two of my favorite subjects, baseball and books. Thank you for being here, John.
Oh, it's so good to be with you.
It's fun to have you on the show. We go way back,
to the last century.
Yeah, and you're the reason I have this show. That's for sure. And the radio show before that, and just about everything I've done since I met you on the radio 100 years ago.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's dive into this book. You see all my stickers here?
You sent me a text last night. I thought I better start, but I don't know what to study for, so there's a pop quiz.
Well, that's my job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're talking about the book Iron Man that you wrote with Randy Hundley.
Yeah.
The Hall of Fame Chicago Cubs catcher. Yeah. Hall of Fame since 1984.
Yeah, so the Chicago Cubs Hall of Fame, let's be real clear. It's not
Chicago
Canton. Cubs Hall of Fame. Yeah, right. Canton's actually football. I actually have a show later today with a Pro Football Hall of Famer, so a little mixed up there. But yes, Randy is in the Chicago Cubs Hall of Fame.
Good. Since 1984. That part I know.
Correct.
And so let's talk about how you two met. Not the first time you met. We'll talk about that a little later because you have a way, things seem to just line up in your life. You've written books about just the connecting the dots.
Yeah.
So don't tell me how you originally met him.
Okay.
Tell me how it came to be that you ended up partnering with him in this book.
So you want to start at the fantasy camp?
Yes.
Okay. So
Not too much about the fantasy camp. We'll get to that too, but let's just talk about how you met him and that article you wrote.
Yeah. My first paid writing assignment was for the long defunct Chicago Sports Profiles magazine. And Lisa, I don't know exactly how it happened, which is probably better that I don't. But this was a guy I grew up, I spell out in the book, who I was my idol growing up, as so many guys in Chicago loved this, the Rebel. And so it was my first paid writing assignment, $250. Mm-hmm. And they said, we want you to go play at this fantasy camp that this guy, Randy Hundley, played for the Cubs, started. And basically what it was is taking guys like me that, some people had zero talent to play sports, and some like me had played college and things like that. And we all get to play baseball in a Chicago Cubs uniform. How effing great is that? And then to write, you're going to pay me to go do this.
Right.
So I went for 3 days. The first time I met Randy, I come walking up, and I allude to that a little bit later in the book about my conversation I'm sure you're going to bring up from way before that. And I started telling him about, how I was gushing, how much I enjoyed being there. And he just waved it off. Just start running, rookie. What are you sitting here batting your guns for? And I had a hell of a time. We played at UIC Field in Chicago for the first 2 days, and I hit a grand slam. And I've been living off it ever since, and I don't care because that just doesn't happen very often. So we go to Wrigley Field to play the pros. So it's the Joes and the pros. And according to them, they've never lost a game. They ran these camps for nearly 40 years, and they never lost a game. And so they all knew I had the prowess to hit pretty well. The guy that had it the mound was Larry Bittner, was an outfielder, kind of infielder, outfielder, journeyman kind of guy. Smoked while he was playing, just great. So while he's up there, first time I get up and they say stop, Randy stops the game and they pull him out and they bring in a guy named Rich Nye. And Rich Nye, I think, won 19 or 20 games in 1969. He's got a left hook like you wouldn't believe. I never saw a pitch. They boom, boom, boom. And so one thing happened for sure. I was so enamored with playing and having a great time and hitting that grand slam. On the other side of it, when we all sit home and say you should have hit that ball, yeah, try it, because it is not as it appears on TV.
Right.
That's how we first met. And about a month after that, he called me. And Randy has this very deep Virginia drawl, and he says, "Hey, boy, that was just one," and he never swears. He says, "That was just one dadgum bloomin' heck of a article you wrote." And we've been friends ever since, and that was 1993.
Mm-hmm. So when it came time for him to decide, I love his analogy, or your analogy, you wrote the book, of early innings, which are the years he spent coming up in baseball, met his wife, Betty, he loved and adored for many years until her passing in 2000. At 58 years old, a loss I could sense he suffered and still suffers.
Correct.
And then his extra innings, which is the baseball camp and things like that. Yeah. But let's talk about, so you sit down with him, and you can compare it to kind of Tuesdays with Maurice, but it was Wednesdays with Randy.
Yeah.
And you have these conversations and you get all of this storytelling.
Yeah.
And I was not lost on those stats. You went back and did some big homework.
Serious
blanks.
Yeah.
Serious filling of the blanks for the statistics that involved in that.
And I appreciate that because thank you, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Analytics too. You met my son.
Yes.
And
Hunter B.
You and I have been friends for many years, Hunter B. And only the people who are closest to him know to call him that.
Yeah.
And he's an analytics kid.
Right.
Baseball cards. And we used to drive down the road and he'd be in his back booster seat. It's kind of how he learned to read and understand numbers. Wow. He'd say, Mom, give me a year. And I'd say 1962. And he'd tell me the winningest pitcher, leading home run hitter. I mean, everything. And to this day, he's still a kid who knows a lot about baseball and football.
Yeah.
So I really paid attention to that. I don't understand all the stats, but as a pitcher, I have a love of baseball.
Yes, you do. And one of the things that I think has kept us together all these years is we love the game of baseball. Even though we root for different teams, that's okay. And I just have to get this in before you continue. Even though the Astros didn't go where you wanted to go this year, every morning on Facebook, I'd say, see you right. Hello, baseball fans. It's a great day for baseball. I'm thinking that's the attitude you got to have in this game.
Yeah. So every day that once it's playoffs, every morning that we have a game, I post their logo and I say, and I went back this year to make sure I put the heart and the baseballs in the order because I don't want to mess up our winning streaks. And I'm all about that.
I saw that.
But I think people see that. And I hear from people, whether they like it or not, or comment on it or not, they're like, oh, okay, Astros play tonight. Thanks for the reminder. Or people pause me for 30 days.
Oh.
they don't want to hear from me again because they're so sick of baseball or don't follow baseball, whatever that the case may be. But let's take a break. When we come back, I want to dive into some of those conversations. And what I felt like when reading this book is it was also a history lesson.
Oh, wow,
because baseball, starting with a person who's in his 80s now, there was a lot going on in the world. And just like there is today, a lot going on in the world, having baseball and having the playoffs is a retreat for me. Yeah. And I think that's what we talk about. That's what you talk about here in the book. It was Vietnam and all the things that were happening in the world, but there was also baseball.
That's right.
So let's take a break. We're talking with John St. Augustine. We'll be back in just a moment. We are back talking with you, John St. Augustine, about your book, Iron Man, the book that you wrote with and for Randy Hundley, Chicago Cubs Hall of Famer catcher. And we were talking about how this book, because of the timeline of his life, there's a lot of history in there. He talks about Vietnam. He talks about when President Kennedy was shot. He talks about how baseball was important to people because it was kind of an escape from what was happening. And it's not unlike what's happening in the world today in terms of, baseball season comes every year either way.
Right.
2020. It comes either way, and it is a reprieve. So I wonder, in talking with Randy about baseball back then, and then the years you played baseball, how much of baseball changed from when he played it to when you played it? Because he talks about people having second jobs to baseball because they couldn't make enough money, even with with their salary, or when he was paid good money.
Yeah.
And today, the idea that you even have to think about a job after retirement, where he was trying to hustle and come up with that camp and a way to earn a living. He had no skills but baseball.
Yeah.
What about just the game do you feel was any different, or was it timeless for you, the connection between when you played and when he played?
It's an interesting umbilical cord between us, right? So I was a catcher in college, and I played a little semi-pro baseball, never went to the majors. My knees weren't built for it. But being with him and reliving those years when I was a kid and caught in Little League and all that kind of stuff, even then, they were the same game in the 60s and in the 70s. The thing I point out in the book that I think was the major difference in the game then and now is, as you said, these guys took jobs off season. They were like my father. You'd go watch Hundley throw out a guy at home plate and tag him out, and the next week you might run into him at the bank working there when the season's over.
Right.
So they're trying to make ends meet just like my pop was. And I think that was the connection. So close, you can go right down the line. Even the biggest names in baseball back then had to do something for the most part off season just to get through. one of the things he did was a little hobby center he had. I was cracking up when he's telling me this. He thought he would make a fortune on hobby cars for some reason. So instead of taking a job the first year he was out of baseball in the off season as a rookie, he started this little hobby center. And he says, well, that didn't work out. So, but these little nuances with the game, he and I go to lunch every week now, even though the book's out, we talk and we do book signings and things. And then, you can't go to a sports bar and not have 15 TVs on it. He'll sit there and pick, he says, watch, this is going to happen. And sure enough, it happens, right?
Yeah.
He just has that. And one of the big thrills for me was about 2 months ago. He asked me to go with him to the Hall of Fame induction of Mark Grace and Sean Dunston, both Cub players. And at one point later in the day, I'm up in the Ricketts box, the owner's box, and I'm sitting between just 2 feet behind Billy Williams, who's a Hall of Famer, and Randy, who's a Cubs Hall of Famer, and listening to them talk about the game from over a half century ago gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
The players, the attitude of the players was very different then. The attitude of the fans were different then. Nobody wore batting gloves. Nobody wore sliding oven mitts. There were no logos on their jerseys. There was no battle armor on their arms in case they got hit. These guys were as tough as it comes.
Yeah.
The catcher's equipment has changed dramatically.
Sure.
Randy holds the record for most games caught in a single season, 160 games in a 162-game season in 1968. That will never be broken because it's so platooned now and different. So the game, the basics of the game are the same, but the way the game has exploded and the money that's involved has changed everything.
Right. When we talk, one of the things that I liked reading about, and probably what you were hearing when you were getting goosebumps listening to them talk, is plays. Like he wrote about the tag and things like that.
Yeah.
I love baseball. My son's played baseball for a long time. My late husband was his first coach in T-ball. It took Hunter some time to want to play again after that. He didn't play again until he's 8 years old.
Right.
And my father had told him, because every year I'd try to sign him up, my father finally got Hunter on the phone. I didn't know for years what that conversation was. But my dad said to him, I know you love baseball, but you'll never truly understand the game until you play it. You got to play baseball. You got to sign up for baseball this year. And so years later, Hunter won some significant awards in pitching, and he got to say thank you for some scholarships he got. And they were scholastic scholarships for a lover and a community member of baseball. Mm-hmm. And he said, I just want to thank my mom. When I was 8 years old, I wanted to quit. And she said, one more year. And I just finished my senior year of varsity and all of that. So it was just this metaphor for our lives. But I didn't understand baseball as much until he became a pitcher, because you're part of every single play.
That's it.
And when we talk about, when you're listening to Randy, what is the one play that stands out for you of the stories he told? Was it the tag?
Yeah, don't ask Hundley about the tag unless you want to really hear what
Let's talk about the tag. Give me 1 minute on the tag.
Yeah, so the tag that was actually the first chapter I wrote, because he was so animated. When I asked him a similar question, I said, Randy, what really I'll tell you what stands out. He goes through this whole thing about being in New York against the Mets in 1969. The Cubs had been in first place for 155 days. Nobody can sustain that. There's a lot of reasons. The book goes into the reasons of why that they faltered to some degree. But they get to New York, and they're playing in Shea Stadium, and Tommy Agee's having a heck of a game. And there's this play that is arguably the most celebrated for all the wrong reasons Chicago play of the history of the club, where Tommy Agee, some light hitter substitute guy, gets a hit. Agee coming around. Hundley knows he's not going to stop. The ball's in right field. Jim Hickman picks it up in one swoop, throws it on the laser mark to Hundley at home. The pictures are in the book. And Hundley sweep tags Tommy Agee, and the guy at home, the umpire, calls him safe. And the pictures are famous. They're in Life magazine. It was from that time. And Hundley was livid.
Yes.
So
he was off the ground.
Jumped
off the ground yelling at the umpire.
Unbelievable. And Leo DeRocher, who was no slouch, I think he still holds, he's like 6th place for being ejected in games in history of baseball. He comes out and didn't find out till later that Leo didn't come out so much to argue the tag, but to protect Hundley from bumping the ump.
Yeah.
Because if Hundley bumps you up, you're out of the game.
Yeah.
And they could not afford that. So that was the thing. And even when we had a book signing, Lisa, about 2-3 months ago, people kept asking that question. He was out. Apparently later, Agee confessed that he was out, but he wasn't going to say nothing. And that he felt was not the most pivotal play of the season. It was the most revealing one. like something snapped and went in a different direction, because baseball is a game of woulda, coulda, shoulda.
It is.
If he would have tagged him and he would have been called out, maybe they're still tied and maybe it goes in a different direction. And so that one play is really the seminal piece of his career, what he's known for, I think. And when you see the pictures of the book, they're amazing.
That's why. Well, and what I dislike almost most in baseball is when there's a call that changes the outcome.
Yeah.
When it changes the outcome, then you go play and you think. And the other thing I don't like so much is when a game is determined by one inning. Like you can look at the scoreboard and go, oh, those 4 runs, if those hadn't happened, every other inning was pretty set. But whatever went wrong in that inning. So when I read the part about the tag, I thought, oh, you're going to do that the rest of your life. And he mentions it comes back
everywhere he
goes.
Everywhere he goes. And his son Todd played for the Mets years later, which he felt was like some weird karmic kickback. You know, the team that they hated the most in '69 and that overtook them and became the Miracle Mets, his son ends up playing with them and setting a major league home run record for catchers up as a Met. So go figure.
There you go, figure.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a break. We'll come back. I want to talk about his fantasy baseball league. Yeah. And what an innovative guy to just trying to stay in baseball. Right. And we'll talk about major league coaching and his dream for that. We'll be back in just a moment. We are finishing up with you. We could have this conversation for 2 more hours, my friend. Easy. So let's get to Randy. Well, we're talking about your book, Iron Man. You wrote it with Randy Hundley. And let's talk about his innovation, because he thought he might go the path of being a major league baseball manager, coach.
Right.
And, he got a little bit up in the ranks. I think he made it all the way to AAA, right?
AAA, yeah. Texas,
and then he got fired and came up with a different idea of having this Randy Hundley's baseball fantasy camp. Tell us about the camp and what it meant to the people who participate.
Oh boy, there's a whole chapter on it. It's called Field of Dreams. What else could I title it but that?
Sure.
Randy was in a bit of a bind. You know, he'd been an investment banker and things like that. But as you point out, he wanted to be a manager in baseball. And catchers make great baseball managers because they see the whole field. And, David Ross here in Chicago has done a really good job. And you think of Mike Scioscia and, all these rest of these guys. But he got fired, cleaning house, devastated. They were out to lunch. He and a friend of his. And the guy said, what about, camps for kids? Those are popular. So they started with camps for kids. And after about a year of that, a season that, he was out to lunch with the same guys again. They said, well, what about bringing some of the players in to teach the kids? And then he literally said, John, God spoke to me. The baseball gods descended on me. And he had this idea to take guys like me and ladies and put a Cubs uniform on them and play in Arizona in spring training. Get them the experience of that very few people have. And it goes back to what you said before. If you really want to understand it, you got to get in a uniform. You got to go run the sprints and do the drills and all the blisters and stuff. And so the first one he did, I believe, was in 1983. It sold out basically because they just marketed here in Chicago. And here, there's commercials. You should see them on YouTube. They're hilarious. He's just like, well, come on out, play baseball. And, it was very unscripted.
His marketing was on point though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Where else are you going to do it? Everybody here knows him. And they still revere this guy. And so the first one was in 83. And then within 6 months, they did a second one that sold out. And the big one there was he got Leo DeRocher, his old manager, to come in and be one of the managers of the teams with the pros. And then some of the other guys, Steve Stone, Cy Young Award winner, be the manager for the guys, for the Joes. And the formula was born. And they repeated it twice a year until COVID for 38 years.
Amazing.
Unbelievable. So there's a whole chapter in there. And I knew there had to be something. At first, I thought maybe just some thoughts from campers, as we're called, interspersed between the chapters. I thought, no, I literally had 300 letters. And I had to figure out like 9 or 10 to use because there's not enough space. And the same thing that comes over and over again was I got to live my dream. And in baseball, is that not what it's all about?
Yeah.
So I got to tell you, I still get kind of emotional thinking about going to do that. It was 30 plus years ago for me. And it is not something you easily forget. So when we did the book signings, we had campers, a whole couple tables of campers that came in from all over. And they couldn't wait to see him. And they call him Coach, of course. And so as Fergie Jenkins, who wrote the foreword of the book, who would know? Cy Young Award winner, unfortunately played for Texas. Sorry to tell you that. After he played for the Cubs, but he wrote the foreword of the book, and Randy caught more of Fergie Jenkins's games than anybody that he played with.
Yeah.
And he says, you have to understand two things about Utley. He has a singular place in the game. No one will ever catch more games. In the history of baseball, nobody will get behind the plate more than he did. And number two, while he was not a manager of a major league team, he managed thousands of people that wanted to play baseball for 38 years. That takes a lot. He basically built his own franchise. Fascinating.
Really incredible, because baseball, unlike basketball and football, there's not farm leagues. I mean, I guess there are. Football, you could end up playing different places, or basketball too. But coming up in baseball, you got to want it. And then you got to pick a girl who wants it, because she's going to be supporting you probably financially and wherever you're going all over the place if you want a family. And it's just incredible the way, how things move so quickly. I mean, we got Verlander back. I mean,
I saw that. Right?
How does that happen? My phone was blowing up with that day from Hunter.
Brought to you by AARP.
Exactly, right? And so it's just, for anyone to get to live that out like that, just incredible. I don't. Maybe somebody else will try to duplicate it, but it won't be Randy Humphrey.
No, it won't be the same. And there's talk of maybe coming back at some point with his son Todd. Randy, unfortunately, at 81, doesn't have the gas in the tank to do that, but it lives on in all of us that have played it.
He's in his extra innings, he calls it.
100%.
Okay, we have 1 minute left. Tell me how you met him. I can't believe I waited too long to ask you this question, but go.
So when I was a kid, I used to wait for on the corner for autographs. And after the 1969 year, of course, we're all devastated, but we all still kept coming out to this corner. Matter of fact, in another book I wrote called Every Moment Matters, there's a chapter called The Corner that explains that. And I would wait there. So one day in 1970, it's pouring rain. They're playing the new Expos out of Montreal. I go to the corner. Nobody's there except me. No, none of the guys stop for autographs or anything. I'm 0 for 3. No handshakes, no high fives, no autographs. Getting ready to leave. And I turn around to look, and here comes a red 1970 Corvette. Coolest car I'd ever seen. Cub 9 on the license plate, comes driving down the street, pulls over, the window rolls down, and it's friggin' Randy Hundley. And he says, boy, what in the Sam Hill are you doing standing out in the rain? You're going to get a cold and die. Get in the car. I get in his car. He signs my mitt, which was my pillow that night. I still have that mitt. And he says, get home for dinner. And I ran home, and nobody would believe that it happened. Well, it certainly did. Of course, years later, the big hook is, and at the end of the book I talk about this, that Corvette is still in his driveway.
Yeah.
And every time I go to his house, oh my God.
You tap the door.
I'm 10 years old again. I'm knocking on the window going, you still in there? Yeah. So that's what baseball has brought me. And I've never been more honored. I've worked on a lot of projects. Yeah. I've never been more honored, more touched, and emotionally connected to something like I am with Ironman. It's just the highest calling I could have ever had with this.
You were meant to write this book.
Yeah, I guess so.
You were meant to write this book. Thank you for sharing your time with us. We could do this and go on and on, but
maybe we will after the show.
Yeah, we will. We'll turn it off and we'll keep going.
There you go.
So much.
Thanks, Lisa B.